Hello, I'm Matt, and I chose Brown versus Board of Education and how it was portrayed in the media as my domestic issue occurring within the United States during the 1950s. The first article I used, which was my African American historical newspaper, was from the Chicago Defender. It was published July 13th, 1957. The article's title, I thought, was particularly powerful. With the number 22, it's kind of jarring to see how many times the issue was fought, mainly by southern states and governments. So it does convey southern states' unwillingness to accept the decision in Brown versus Board of Education. There is no author of this article, which was interesting that I could see anyway. At the end of the article, it specified major state-by-state developments in regard to segregation. A lot of them were how many school districts plan to desegregate the following fall. Some were, how angry, quotes from state government officials and whatnot. Basically, the article details how the Supreme Court had acted 22 times on segregation since 1954. It details 8 new school districts in border and mid-southern states announcing desegregation plans for the following fall. There were a couple quotes I found interesting throughout the article. One was a major of the pleas for reviews by the court have been rejected, or a majority of the pleas for review by the court have been rejected, which basically says that, the decision was being upheld almost always. So, the fact that it was challenged so many times was really interesting. Another quote was, "It would appear that the court has adhered with considerable consistency to the policy it established in the 1955 Brown decision," which essentially just elaborates on, what I just said. There was really consistent rulings in favor of the decision that was made in Brown versus Board of Education, and this article definitely highlighted that. A little bit of background on the Chicago Defender. It was founded in 1905 by Robert S. Abbott, who was an African-American lawyer at the time. This newspaper was famous for attacking white oppression, and because of that, it was actually banned in many southern states and territories. Despite it being banned, it was often smuggled in and circulated to African-American readers. It became a really popular newspaper. In the middle, I have a picture of Robert S. Abbott with the Chicago Defender title logo above him. And then on the right side of the page, I have a screenshot of the article itself. My second article is from the New York Times, obviously, and it is titled, "Brown Case Opened Pupil Fight in 52, Negro Sought to Enter Topeka School." This article was published anyway, August 29th, 1958. Once again, no author, just says special to the New York Times. It really detailed the Brown versus Board of Education court case and the timeline associated with it, which says, Oliver Brown filed a class action suit in 52 after his daughter Linda Brown was denied entrance into an all-white Topeka, Kansas elementary school. The case was argued December 9th, 1952. But in the following spring, it was put over for re-argument, which actually happened a couple times, according to the article. I have a quote from the article, which says, "The court delayed a decision on how segregation should be ended. It ordered re-argument on that problem, which was held April 11th through the 14th of 1955, and the decision came the following May 31st. That was the decision on Brown versus Board of Education. It was also included by the Supreme Court that time might be allowed to localities to achieve orderly compliance, which was kind of telling and really explained the severity of the decision and the violence that really could ensue, from a change like this, especially for a lot of the southern states that were pretty, angry about the change. Another quote that I liked from the article was, "It should go without saying that the vitality of these constitutional principles cannot be allowed to yield simply because of disagreement with them," which basically goes, back to the first article, which is, no matter how angry people are with this case, we need to uphold, this ruling, which they were true to their word and did, in fact. Here's a little bit of background on the New York Times, which I'm sure all of us are aware of. It was the mainstream media of the time. It was founded in 1851 as a penny paper. Instead of being aimed at more of a mass audience, they fancied themselves a cultured and intellectual paper, and kind of tried to target that audience with their articles. It's obviously still widely in circulation. It's influential in modern news and politics, just to illustrate kind of how large the paper is. It's traded on the New York Stock Exchange at $51 a share as of when I made this slide, which was an hour or two ago. On the left, I have a picture of the article itself. Now into biases and differences present in the two articles. There were definitely biases. First was in the use of certain words in the titles themselves. The Chicago Defender article used Dixie. The New York Times article used Negro. Although obviously both were common words in the 50s, I just couldn't help but think that both had, subtle negative connotation to them. Dixie being, referring to the South, obviously, and Negro referring to African Americans. Neither term is really widely used anymore because they are now, once again considered to be, negative terms. The Defender article pointed out the trouble that the southern states are going through to try to reverse the Supreme Court's ruling. It kind of came off to me like, the southern states were really acting like sore losers. And this paper really, this article, the Chicago Defender article, really tried to stress that they were really making this difficult. On the other hand, the New York Times article mentioned that the court delayed a decision, and they really made it, it was really like a calmly written article. They mentioned deliberate speed and integration, and mentioned pupil fight in the title, which I thought was a little bit strange. Obviously, they, mentioned the deliberate speed and integration to kind of highlight the violence and protests that might ensue without actually mentioning the violence and protests. Differences in the articles. Both articles I found to be surprisingly factual. Obviously, we're all used to like real clickbaity, sensationalist, news today. I found these to be pretty factual, with dates, with descriptions, with direct quotes, which I liked. The Chicago Defender article focused on the continuation of reviewing the ruling on segregation, which was not being overturned. While the New York Times article focused on the original Supreme Court ruling in Brown v. Board of Education. One other thing that I did notice about the New York Times article is that it referred to Oliver Brown as a Negro boy, which was, obviously disrespectful and strange, considering he was a man fighting for his daughter's, right for educational equality. Here are some quotes that stuck out to me throughout reading the two articles. The first is actually the ruling from the Supreme Court in Brown v. Board of Education, which says, in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. A couple other quotes. One was from J.P. Coleman, the Mississippi governor, and this is from the Chicago Enforcer article, when it did a state-by-state breakdown. It says, we have no intention of complying with the decision that we regard to be utterly unconstitutional. This further illustrates, how state governments were really making it difficult on the ruling and doing everything they can to cause chaos in regards to desegregation. Another quote from that same article was Texas's update on desegregation, which was that appeal was announced of a state court order restricting NAACP activities. They're restricting, the NAACP from, helping African Americans, helping on the issue of segregation, helping, represent people like Brown in this case, to further enhance the education of their loved ones and friends. And finally, I have the citations in Chicago style for both articles. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much.